Part 2 Readings. Reading number 5. Title: Great Britain. The so-called modern movement, launched as a Labour Party ginger group, was going to end in fascism. By 1930, the Depression had hit England hard, and England hurt. Young men wanted to do something, anything. Old men, at the least those in office, wanted to sit tight. It was from this dilemma that British fascism grew. Sir Oswald Mosley's career is a good illustration of the irritation of young men faced with sluggish, elderly indecision. Their frustration at seeing stones thrown against party glass houses turning to sponges in midair. The narrow gap between one sort of radicalism and another, between good intentions and degrading means, between great ambitions and sordid ends. Mosley's argument appears most cogently in this first and most successful of his propaganda works, when it had not become completely impossible to take him seriously as a would-be reformer. End of Eugen Weber's foreword for reading number 5. Reading number 5A, entitled Oswald Mosley, The Modern Movement, ****. From Oswald Mosley, The Greater Britain, in brackets, London, 1932, end brackets, pages 15 to 16 and 149 to 160. Misrepresentation. We are also faced by the fact that a few people have misused the name fascism in this country, and from ignorance or in perversion have represented it as the, in quotations, white guard of reaction, end quotations. This is, indeed, a strange perversion of a creed of dynamic change and progress. In all countries, fascism has been led by men who came from the left, and the rank and file has combined the conservative and patriotic elements of the nation with ex-socialists, ex-communists, and revolutionaries who have forsaken their various illusions of progress for the new orderly reality of progress. In our new organization, we now combine within our ranks all those elements in this country who have long studied and understood the great constructive mission of fascism. But we have no place for those who have sought to make fascism the lackey of reaction, and have thereby misrepresented its policy and dissipated its strength. In fact, fascism is the greatest constructive and revolutionary creed in the world. It seeks to achieve its aim legally and constitutionally, by methods of law and order. But in objective, it is revolutionary or it is nothing. It challenges the existing order and advances the constructive alternative of the corporate state. To many of us, this creed represents the thing which we have sought throughout our political lives. It combines the dynamic urge to change and progress with the authority, the discipline, and the order without which nothing great can be achieved. The essence of fascism is the power of adaptation to fresh facts. Above all, it is a realist creed. It has no use for immortal principles in relation to the facts of bread and butter, and it despises the windy rhetoric which ascribes importance to mere formula. The steel creed of an iron age, it cuts through the verbiage of illusion to the achievement of a new reality. Conclusion. The case advanced in these pages covers not only a new political party, but also a new conception of life. In our view, these purposes can only be achieved by the creation of a modern movement invading every sphere of national life. To succeed, such a movement must represent the organized revolt of the young manhood of Britain against things as they are. The enemy is the old gang of our present political system. No matter what their party label, the old parliamentarians have proved themselves to be all the same. It is only natural that nations in crisis should seek the easy and normal way of escape. It is only natural that they should trust the well-known and venerable figures in politics until they are found unworthy of trust and unsuitable to a dynamic age. Only then, with the new determination born of despair, great nations turn to new forces and to new men. The first result of crisis in every nation has always been a national combination of, in quotations, the united muttons, end quotations. Only after their failure, the modern movement begins its inevitable advance. The aim of such a movement must be revolutionary in the fundamental changes which it seeks to secure. To drift much longer, to muddle through much further, is to run the risk of collapse. In such a situation, new ideas will not come peacefully. They will come violently, as they have come elsewhere. In the final economic crisis to which neglect may lead, argument, reason, persuasion vanish, and organized force alone prevails. In such a situation, the eternal protagonists in the history of all modern crises must struggle for the mastery of the state. Either fascism or communism emerges victorious. If it be the latter, the story of Britain is told. Anyone who argues that in such a situation, the normal instruments of government, such as police and army, can be used effectively, has studied neither the European history of his own time, nor the realities of the present situation. In the highly technical struggle for the modern state in crisis, only the technical organizations of fascism and of communism have ever prevailed, or, in the nature of the case, can prevail. Governments and parties which have relied on the normal instruments of government have fallen easy and ignoble victims to the forces of anarchy. We shall prepare to meet the anarchy of communism with the organized force of fascism. But we do not seek that struggle, and for the sake of the nation we desire to avert it. Only when we see the feeble surrender to menacing problems, the fatuous optimism which again and again has been disproved, the spineless drift towards disaster, do we feel it necessary to organize for such a contingency. It is often urged strenuously upon me that I could find acceptance for many of the ideas set out in this book within one of the existing parties, and that it is folly to attempt the great labor of creating new machinery for purposes which could be achieved by existing machinery. Such an argument betrays a complete misunderstanding of the problems and to the history of this period. It would have been equally futile to tell an Italian fascist that he could achieve the Renaissance of Italy through the Parliament of Giolitti, or a German Nazi that he should cease his struggle and should seek to persuade the opponents whose failure created the necessity for his organization. New ideas have never come in the modern world, except from the new and organized reality. In Great Britain, salvation has not come in 14 years from the old parties, and it will not come. They are not alive to the crisis. They are not organized to meet it, and their mind and psychology are unsuited to it. We cannot compromise with them, for, in quotations, their ways are not our ways, and their gods are not our gods, end quotation. It is true that within the old parties and even within the old parliament are many young men whose real place is with us, and who sympathize with our ideas. The real political division of the past decade has not been a division of parties, but a division of generations. We have to discover, as we have already discovered, new men, and we have to create a new force from nothing except the will of the mass of the people to victory. It is thus that every fascist movement has arrived at power, not by combinations of men drawn from the old political system, but by the discovery of new men who come from nowhere, and by the creation of a new force which is free from the trammels of the past. In the coming struggle, we shall have the imposing things of the world against us and much of its material strength. But we have on our side forces which have carried such movements to victory throughout the world. We have in unison in our cause the economic facts and the spiritual tendencies of our age. For our part, we appeal to our countrymen to take action while there is time, and to carry the changes which are necessary by the legal and constitutional methods which are available. If, On the other hand, every appeal to reason is futile in the future, as it has been in the immediate past, and this empire is allowed to drift until collapse and anarchy supervene. We shall not shrink from that final conclusion, and will organize to stand between the state and ruin. We are accused of organizing to promote violence. That accusation is untrue. It is true that we are organized to protect our meetings as far as possible from violence, and very necessary that organization has proved in practice. Already in this country we have a condition in which free speech is a thing of the past. The leaders of the old political parties creep in by back doors under police protection to well-ticketed meetings which would otherwise be broken up by the organized violence of socialist and communist extremists. We have thrown open our meetings to the public, and after the meetings we have exercised the Englishman's right to walk through the streets of our great cities. When we have been attacked, we have hit back. When we are confronted by red terror, we are certainly organized to meet force by force, and will always do our utmost to smash it. We shall continue to exercise the right to free speech, and will do our utmost to defend it. Emphatically, this does not mean that we seek violence. On the contrary, we seek our aims by methods which are both legal and constitutional, and we appeal to our country by taking action in time to avert the possibility of violence. If the situation of violence is to be averted, the old gang government must be overthrown, and effective measures must be adopted before the situation has gone too far. The enemy today is the old gang of present parliamentarism. The enemy of tomorrow, if their rule persists much longer, will be the Communist Party. The old gang are the architects of disaster. The Communists, only its executors. Not until the old gangs have muddled us to catastrophe can communists really operate. So, in the first place, the enemy is the old gang, and the objective is the overthrow of their power. To achieve this by constitutional means will entail, at a later stage, a bid for parliamentary power. In a superficial paradox, it will be necessary for a modern movement which does not believe in Parliament, as at present constituted, to seek to capture Parliament. To us, Parliament will never be an end in itself, but only a means to an end. Our object is not political placeholding, no, but the achievement of national reconstruction. However, the time for elections and Parliament has not yet come. First, it is necessary to build a movement invading every phase of national life and carrying everywhere the corporate conception. In the first instance, we probably made a mistake in contesting parliamentary elections before we had created such a machine. It is a mistake which we have made in common with all new movements which have come to power in Europe since the war. In all cases, the phase of ridicule and defeat has to be passed. Indeed, it is the test of a movement's vitality. In the beginning, the old gangs carry the day, as lightheartedly as Remus leapt over the half-built walls of Rome. Whether our British Union of Fascist parties will arrive at power through parliamentary system, or whether it will reach power in a situation far beyond the control of Parliament, no one can tell. The solution of that question will depend on two incalculable factors. 1. The rapidity with which the situation degenerates. 2. The rapidity with which the British people accept the necessity for new forms and for new organizations. If the situation develops rapidly and the public mind develops slowly, something like collapse may come before any new movement has captured parliamentary power. In that case, other and sterner measures must be adopted for the saving of a state in a situation approaching anarchy. Such a situation will be none of our seeking. In no case shall we resort to violence against the forces of the crown, but only against the forces of anarchy if and when the machinery of the state has been allowed to drift into powerlessness. Strangely enough, such an eventuality is probably a lesser menace. When the character of the British people is considered, then the possibility of a long, slow decline which is so imperceptible that the national will to action is not aroused. In crisis, the British are at their best. When the necessity for action is not clear, they are at their worst. It is possible that we may not come to any clearly marked crisis, and here arises a still greater danger. The industrial machine is running on 2 cylinders instead of 6. A complete breakdown would be a stronger incentive to action than the movement, however cumbrous, of a crippled machine. So long as there is movement of any kind, however inadequate, there is always a lazy hope of better things. The supreme danger in that Britain may sink, almost in her sleep, to the position of a Spain alive, in a sense, but dead to all sense of greatness and to her mission in the world. In a situation of so many and such diverse contingencies, nobody can dogmatize upon the future. We cannot say with certainty when catastrophe will come, nor whether it will take the form of a sharp crisis or of a steady decline to the status of a second-rate power. All that we can say with certainty is that Britain cannot muddle on much longer without catastrophe or the loss of her position in the world. Against either contingency, it is our duty to arouse the nation. To meet either the normal situation of political action or the abnormal situation of catastrophe, it is our duty to organize. Therefore, while the principle for which we fight can be clearly described in a comprehensive system of politics, of economics, and of life, it would be folly to describe precisely in advance the road by which we shall attain them. A great man of action once observed, in quotations, "No man goes very far who knows exactly where he is going," end quotations. And the same observation applies with some force to modern movements of reality in the changing situations of today. We ask those who join us to march with us in a great and hazardous adventure. We ask them to be prepared to sacrifice all, but to do so for no small and unworthy ends. We ask them to dedicate their lives to building in this country a movement of the modern age, which, by its British expression, will transcend, as often before in our history, every precursor of the continent in conception and in constructive achievement. We ask them to rewrite the greatest pages of British history by finding for the spirit of their age its highest mission in these islands. Neither to our friends nor to the country do we make any promises. Not without struggle and ordeal will the future be won. Those who march with us will certainly face abuse, misunderstanding, bitter animosity, and possibly the ferocity of struggle and danger. In return, we can only offer to them the deep belief that they are fighting that a great land may live. End of reading 5A.